This is Tom, who wants to talk about the nature of the universe and whether or not it's rational. And you're on with Tracy and John. Hi, Tom. You're in Eddyville?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Hi, Tracy.
Hey.
I got you on TV. I don't recognize the gentleman there. Was it
John?
I'm John.
Hi, John. Haven't heard much from you today.
Oh, I'm here. Let me let John talk to you then about the universe.
I'll talk to you about the universe.
Well, first off, I'm no physicist or astrophysicist. I'm just a country preacher. But
that's good because I'm not one either. So we're on good ground.
Okay. Well, good. Is the universe rational? I guess. What do you think? Is the universe, the solar system, is it rational or
I can't imagine what that would mean. What do you mean by rational?
To the laws of certain laws?
Like physical laws?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that certain physical laws are in place that affect how the universe operates. I wouldn't call that rational, though, because to me, rational means an intelligence.
I think the question would be, if I can just interject to facilitate for one moment, I will allow this discussion to continue, but I'm thinking what you're asking is, can it be rationally understood?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, if it could be rationally understood, then it would have to, it'd have to conform to certain, I guess, laws.
Right. But I think what's confusing, John, is the idea of an object being rational. And
yeah,
so,
is this coffee cup rational?
Right.
I'm having trouble wrapping my mind.
So I think what you're mainly trying to ask is, can it be rationally understood?
Or is it subject to the laws subject to the laws of nature? Is it subject to the laws of logic?
I think laws of logic are something that we create to understand things.
So I don't mean to sound aggressive, but so by that we can conclude, or you could conclude that the universe isn't logical then.
Again, I'm not quite sure.
Let me interject.
What your terminology means.
I'm going to interject for another moment. Laws of logic, as in a thing is what it is, right? That's what we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess so. The laws of
that to me.
The laws of logic, formal fallacies, informal fallacies. I'm not an expert in any of that, kid. Okay. I'm just trying to nail something down, and you know where I'm going with this.
Do we agree that things have properties? Right, like John held up a mug. That mug has properties, right? Like it has a particular hardness to it that we can measure, right?
Right.
It has the property.
Conforms to the law of logic.
Well, but it also has like hardness and particular color properties that we can measure, right? And so, to me, when I look at a property like a thing is what it is, what we're talking about are inherent properties of things that apply to all the things of which we are aware. So these are sort of universal properties, right? Like the mug,
right,
in addition to being a certain level of hardness, to not being a liquid, for example, also is a mug. The mug is a mug. And so when you're saying, does the universe conform to the laws of logic, as far as we're aware, all of the things that we have observed are what they are. And in that capacity, it does conform to the laws of logic in the same way that the mug is hard, or the mug has a certain hardness to it that can be measured, or
Can I interject?
Sure.
Yeah, because I want to know where you're going with this.
Okay. Well, I kind of thought you guys might know. So the mug coincides with the law of identity, right? The mug is a mug, and it's not something else.
Sure. Everything I'm aware of conforms to that.
Okay, and so that would include the universe.
Yes,
sure. All
the things I'm aware of in the universe, I think I can safely say conform to that.
Okay, well, that's where I'm trying to build my argument, and I don't know if it's my own. I like to research these things out on my own, and so feel free to kick my bucket out from underneath me. But so if there are laws of logic within that coincide with nature or the universe, then that would mean that they preceded a mind. Would that be right? For the human mind, at least.
Yeah, sure. They would exist whether there were minds or not minds. Now,
Okay.
whether or not there's a question that comes up in Taoism, right, of whether or not, without a mind to differentiate, there are things. So what they're saying in Taoism is that everything is one thing until you have something that has perception, because that's the only way to judge something is different than something else, is that you perceive it as different. So the mug is harder than water, right? Because that is because I perceive hardness and liquid.
It's just like a tree falling in the forest. And
Yeah. So there is this question of is the universe one thing until you have a mind to start distinguishing the things, right?
to perceive
Sounds like did you say Taoism? T-A-O?
Yeah, it's pronounced Taoism, but it does, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there is a question there about whether or not there would be things without a mind.
Okay. Well, that sounds almost like it's gotten into a little bit of the quantum stuff, where like the quarks, that sometimes they're here, sometimes they're not.
If that's true,
I'm not a physicist.
if that's true, then they were way ahead of the game, because this is an ancient religious or philosophical position. I don't think they were aware of quantum physics at the time they were thinking this through.
Weren't.
They might have been aware of some drugs. But I don't know about how they probably didn't understand quantum physics, is my guess.
Well, I like what one apologist said. He said, you can't not take any worldview, legitimate worldview that's out there unseriously.
Right.
You have to be able to take it seriously, research it, and those kind of things. That's what I'm trying to do with naturalism, is to say that naturalism can't be dependent on the human mind for logic.
No, but can it be dependent? But can it be dependent on a human mind for distinction?
Well, I guess I would need to know what you mean by distinction.
The difference between that mug and water, is it different if there's no mind to compare the things, or is it just stuff? Right, and so
that's a good question. I'd have to ask. Would that be relevant, though, to the existence of logic?
Well, if you're saying without a mind, is the mug a mug? I'm saying that without a mind, there may not be mugs. I mean, not in the sense that we understand a mug, because our understanding is a mind, and so
the same would be for logic,
right? Without a mind, it's just stuff. It's just atoms.
So I can say, without fear of contradiction on my end, as the theistic end, is that there is a mind. It's the mind of God.
Well, that's an assumption.
We know you think that because you're a theist, but
right. But you'd have to demonstrate that as a reality, right? So if there is no God,
the existence of logic prior to the human mind,
that doesn't mean that there's a.
How do you get to God from there?
The issue here.
There has to be a mind.
No, there doesn't.
Logic, right?
No. Why?
No.
Why?
Because within the idea of naturalism, logic is dependent on the conventions of men or of minds.
I don't agree with that. If we're going to say that the laws of logic transcend minds, then what we're saying is that, well, why would it not transcend every mind?
Why would it not transcend any mind? Why don't you elaborate on that a little better?
If it transcends my mind, why wouldn't it transcend a mind of a God? What do you know about the mind of a God? Can you please enlighten me about what we know about the mind of God?
Well, he would be the originator of logic if he existed prior to the human mind.
How do you know this? So God could not exist prior to a human mind and not be the originator of logic? That's impossible?
Logic would have to consist with the mind of God.
Why?
Because God is eternal, then logic would have to be eternal, wouldn't it?
How do you know the mind of God is eternal? Where have you gotten this information? Where can we confirm this?
Well, I have a little example, if I can share it with you. If you don't mind,
it'd be the first example of the mind of God I've ever had.
I'm sure you've heard this before. I've heard it can be contradicted or refuted, and perhaps maybe you guys can do it. So it'd only take a minute. The eternality of numbers. Each number, both negative and positive, every number exists and it stands by itself. It's independent of the other number. And they go on for eternity. Numbers go on for eternity, and each of them have a name. The number 1, the name is 1, etc., on up through eternity. Because they exist by themselves. They do exist in eternity because we know numbers go on eternally. That number, every number off into eternity, has to have a mind that knows of its existence.
No, it does not.
Whoa,
it does not. Why? How? Where are you
Giant
getting to
leap.
that? Yeah, how did you get to that leap? Here's my thing, though. Let me just ask you this. If there is no God, then God is not the author of the laws of logic, correct?
If there is no God, then God...
Is that correct? Is that correct?
I'll go okay.
Well, I mean, it has to be correct. If there is no God, then the laws of logic are not a product of the mind of God, correct?
I guess what I'm leaning towards, I'd say without God, there can be no laws of logic.
And here's my thing. Things that do not exist cannot be the cause of other things. Is that true?
Things that do not exist?
Right, cannot be the cause of other things.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Things that do not exist that cannot be the cause of other things. Yes, that's true.
Okay, so
What you said is true.
if you cannot demonstrate that a God exists, you cannot use it as a cause. If the laws of logic exist and you want to posit that God is the cause of those laws, then you need to demonstrate a God exists, and only then can it be put forward as a cause, as a valid cause.
Okay, well, I guess and maybe I'm not nailing it down quite right. And like some atheist guys I know say, well, you'll win the Nobel Prize if you get this one down. I think the idea is that because, and you said you didn't agree with the idea that logic is man-made. Human logic, is not. You said it's not man-made.
Well, you're talking about the laws of logic, the idea of
Yes.
a thing is what it is. Would that be the case without minds? And I'm saying I don't really know. It kind of depends on nuances of how you distinguish between things. But in general, the stuff that is would still be, and it would still be what it is, whether the mind was here or not. Now, whether there would be a mug is another question. There would be something, and it would be whatever it was. And that is, everything that I'm aware of is subject to that. But my issue is, if you want to say, I believe that God is the cause of the laws of logic, the next step to that hypothesis would be to demonstrate the existence of a God, or to come up with a test to test for the existence of a God, so that you could then say, I now have an existent thing that can account for this, because you have to be able to examine it and also demonstrate that it does, in fact, account for the laws of logic. Right now, you're asserting it as a hypothesis, but I'm asking how you plan to demonstrate it as a reality.
Otherwise, it's just a circular argument.
I don't know. Maybe we're not getting anywhere here. I might have to call back another time. But
no, we are. You're saying that you.
I wasn't sure, Tracy, of what you said when you said that. When I asked the question, do the laws of logic, are they strictly natural? Do they only work through the mind of human beings?
I don't know what you mean by do they work, right? I mean, they're properties.
Or are they only real through the minds of human beings? I've heard naturalists say that logic exists only in the minds of men.
Now, there's logic, and then there's the laws of logic. Those are separate things.
Okay, let's just say the laws of logic. Do they only exist in the minds of men?
I think that they are descriptors of inherent
what already
properties
is, yeah.
of the thing or things. It's a little bit tough to describe it, but the point is, you're saying that you believe the cause of those concepts, or whatever you want to call them, those laws, is a mind of a God. And I'm saying that first thing then, in order to find out if you're right, would be to, number one, demonstrate a God exists. Number two, demonstrate it can account for them. Once we have done that, now we've got something. But right now, you're saying this is the cause, but we don't even know that God exists, and so how can we even examine it as a cause?
I guess my thinking is that God is a conclusion.
No,
we're putting the
you're
cart
saying
before
it. You
the
can't
horse
say that
here.
the conclusion is the cause, right? Because even when you put forward that something that we don't know if it exists or not is causing something, we need to, don't you agree, confirm that it exists in order to be able to sort of proceed?
Well, I think what we need to agree on and it appears to me that you say that the laws of logic are man-made. They're only in the minds of men. Am I right?
I don't think I said that. I said that they're properties. Now, whether or not, or to what extent those properties are impacted by perception is a big question.
Properties from what? From what?
They are properties of. No, they're properties of things, right? That we are, you can identify a thing. I can identify that mug is harder than water, right? I can just make that distinction. The hardness of the mug is then a property of the mug that I observe as a subjective observer. But I don't control it. I'm not making the mug however hard it is. I'm simply observing it's however hard it is.
So the laws of logic existed prior to you determining...
They are attributes of, as far as we know, everything, right? I mean...
they come from everything?
They are attributes, just like hardness is an attribute. Where does hardness come from?
What you mean by attribute?
It's a property of the thing, a property of the mug. You're asking, where does it come from? Where does the hardness of the mug come from? It comes from like the atomic structure, I guess, of the mug.
So it exists. The laws of logic exist innately in the mug.
I'm making an observation of something that is true about the universe around me. The observation is everything appears to be what it is. And that's an observation, but it's also an observation based on what I perceive. So the inputs that I'm getting from outside myself lead me to conclude that things are what they are. But these are properties. It's a property of something that I'm observing.
It doesn't mean that she created the property.
I'm not making things what they are.
She's observing the property.
But then see, the Taoists would say I do make things what they are. So it's kind of a weird...
How do you draw conclusions? What rules do you use to draw conclusions? And did those rules exist prior to...
And what I'm saying is whether the question here is really what causes the rules. And you're asserting that the cause of the rules is the mind of God. And I'm saying that's an interesting hypothesis. How do you intend to test it and to demonstrate that it's actually correct and not just something you think intuitively is right?
Yeah, you're basically trying to make the argument that a God is necessary for those things to exist. And that's, I think, where the
You have to demonstrate it. You can't
Yeah.
just assert it. You have to demonstrate it. A hypothesis is what you're putting forward here. You're saying this is what I think, and this makes sense to me. And I'm saying that's great. Now, how are you going to demonstrate it?
Okay. Well, the way if I can just share, and then I'll go ahead and go. So you guys.
Okay, because the way to demonstrate it, number one, is demonstrate that this cause exists. Because unless it exists, it cannot cause other things. It has to exist.
Because the laws of logic exist outside of the human mind, and the rules are a part of the universe. That means that, like, exhibited through the laws of nature.
How do you know that nature itself does not have that as an attribute? That those laws are not attributes of the natural universe? How do you know this?
How do I know that
It is not an attribute of the
matter?
natural universe.
Yeah. Did they have a beginning?
I don't know.
Possibly
I don't
not.
know.
Has gravity always existed?
I don't know.
Okay. So I don't know is your answer for the laws of nature, including gravity, matter, light?
Well, if you're asking me when did they originate or did they have an origination, my answer is I don't know. If you're saying did gravity exist prior, for example, to this universe, I don't know. I don't know what existed prior to this universe. So yes, that's my answer. If you're asking what existed prior to the incarnation that we live in now, I don't know.
Okay, well, that leads to another question, but I'll save it for another time. Unless you want me to go on.
No, we do have other calls.
I did want to say, though, that you kind of said you developed this on your own, but this is something other people have come up with. It's called the Kalam cosmological argument. And the problem is that basically it's a giant leap, like we were trying to explain, that logic exists, therefore it must have come from a God.
And the other problem,
and that's the thing that I can never get past.
Well, the other problem with an argument like this is that this is not the reason anyone believes in a God. This is literally masturbation, mental masturbation. This is people just going off and arguing to argue, because this is not the reason anybody believes in a God. This is an excuse that people use to tie up other people in useless philosophical discussions that really aren't relevant to why people believe or don't believe a God exists. It doesn't really help answer the question at all, and it's not really intended to. It's intended to be a diversion.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Right, thanks.